From the eternal sea he rises, creating armies on either shore, turning man against his brother, till man exists no more. The book of Revelations predicted it all.
Judgment is unleashed upon the empire of the beast. And at the end of this, Jesus, the Son of Man, returns to the earth with the armies of heaven to confront the beast at Armageddon. This is a kinetic war. The armies of the beast are post-human legions. And they're operating advanced technology. It is a kinetic war. And there's a lot to be said there. But the point here is that my name is Timothy Alberino, and you are watching End Times Productions. Jesus said that the end of the age, which is the age in which we now live, the age of Pisces, would be like the days of Noah. And he said that people would be eating and drinking and marrying and given in marriage, and then destruction would come suddenly. But there's also, I don't want to use the word inconspicuous, I'll say it, but there's also an inconspicuous allusion there to other things that were happening in the days of Noah, namely the advent of the Watchers and the giants. So at the end of the age, I believe that we will see, to some degree, a repeat of the events that transpired before the flood of Noah. We will see the birthright of mankind usurped by hybrid beings in the same way that it was usurped in the Genesis 6 affair. But this time, it's not just going to be a group of watchers, in my opinion, who copulate with human women and produce hybrid sons who take dominion of the earth. Rather, this time it's going to be the dragon and his angels who take human wives, who copulate with them, and who procreate through them human hybrid offspring, who will become the kings and rulers of the earth. I believe that this event, this is very complicated and we don't have to get into the details. I do go into them in my book. I believe that this event is illustrated in the dragon and the beast from Revelation, the seven-headed dragon and the seven-headed beast from the book of Revelation, the dragon standing on the shore of the sea, presiding over the rise of the beast. The beast basically mirrors the dragon, seven heads, and so forth. And I believe, again, it's very complicated, it's detailed in the book, but I believe this is indicative of the fact that the dragon and his princes are going to procreate with human women, hybrid kings, who are going to govern the earth for a time, usurp dominion of the earth from the sons of Adam. They're going to be human enough to appropriate the birthright of Adam. That's the key. That's why they have to be hybrids. That's why they had to be hybrids with the Watchers. That's why they have to be hybrids at the end of the age. They have to be human enough to appropriate the authority, the dominion, to appropriate the dominion of Adam, the birthright of Adam. And they're going to usurp dominion of the earth, and they're going to rule for a time. This is, of course, the Antichrist and his empire at the end of the age. He's going to preside over a post-human paradigm on planet Earth. In other words, the majority of the citizens of his empire are no longer going to be human. So while we're losing our humanity, the devil and his angels are procreating hybrid children that can assume the governance of the earth, legally appropriate the birthright of mankind, so that they can do exactly what the Watchers did. They can govern the earth, and the dragon and his angels rule by proxy from behind the thrones of their hybrid sons. And I believe that the devil doesn't do this until he knows he has a short time. Because when this transgression happens, he knows he has a short time. Because the mechanisms of judgment will be put into motion, will be set into motion just like before the flood. He knows that. So this is the final card he's going to play at the end of the age. So I concur with many others, many of my colleagues who believe that the Antichrist will in fact be the hybrid son of the dragon with a human woman. And furthermore, I propose that the 10 kings who are reigning at the end of the age are also going to be hybrid kings. And the reason why I believe that is because, and again, we won't go into all the details, they are in the book, is because of Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the statue that had the different segments of the statue were cast in different metals, and at the bottom, the final empire that will rule the earth before the kingdom of the Son of God destroys it, crushes it, pulverizes it, which is what happens to the statue. That final empire is a hybrid empire. It's it's the feet of the statue, which are made of iron mixed with clay. It's a hybridized empire. And how many toes do a normal pair of feet have? 10. How many kings arise at the end of the age? 10. I believe there are 10 hybrid kings, just like the 5 hybrid twins of Poseidon, who ruled over Atlantis. There's going to be hybrid kings, the offspring of the dragon and his angels, the dragon princes, who are going to govern the earth at the end of the age, who are going to usurp the dominion of mankind, the birthright of Adam, so that the earth is once again thrown into this dystopic nightmare that was the antediluvian age. It's going to mirror that. And there's going to be no hope for humanity because their birthright has been usurped, and they can't get it back because the majority of mankind is going to be in a post-human condition. Not all of mankind. There will be a remnant who are not. But the majority of mankind would have transitioned into a post-human condition. And this is why I believe that in the book of Revelation, when John is in heaven and he's beholding this vision of heaven, and he's standing there and he sees the Father sitting on the throne, and the Father has a scroll in his right hand. And an angel is proclaiming in a loud voice, "Who is worthy to take the scroll and open its seals?" Who is worthy to take the scroll from the right hand of the Father and open its seals? And no one was found worthy in heaven or on earth to take the scroll and break its seals. And John says, "And I wept bitterly." And I always was perplexed. Why is John weeping over this scroll? It doesn't make any sense. Why is this scroll eliciting this deep, profound emotion from John? Why? Because that scroll is the deed of the earth. It's the birthright. It's the deed. And because mankind has lost dominion of the earth, they have forfeited the birthright because they transitioned out of Adam and into a post-human condition. And the dragon, the offspring of the dragon, has usurped it. And it's a hopeless situation, just like in Genesis 6. And John is weeping because he's looking at the nightmare unfolding on the earth, and nobody is worthy. And why isn't anybody worthy? Because only a son of Adam can take the scroll. It's the birthright of mankind. Only a son of Adam can open that scroll. And John is weeping because nobody has the authority to do it. But the angel says to him, "Do not weep. For the Lamb of God," or something to this effect, "has triumphed. And he is able to take the scroll." And so John sees a lamb that looked like it had been slain, and he took the scroll because he was worthy to take the scroll. And he began to break its seal. So what are we seeing here? This is what we're seeing. Even if there is not a single son of Adam left on planet Earth, there is still a son of Adam seated at the right hand of the Father. Jesus is our kinsman redeemer. He is a human being. And because he is a human being, because he is a son of Adam, he is worthy, he has the authority to take the birthright of Adam, the deed of mankind, the dominion of the earth that was given to Adam. He is a rightful heir of that authority. He is worthy to take that scroll and break its seals. And that is exactly what he does. And he begins to break the seals. And as each seal is broken, judgment is unleashed upon the empire of the beast. And at the end of this, Jesus, the Son of Man, returns to the earth with the armies of heaven to confront the beast at Armageddon. This is a kinetic war. The armies of the beast are post-human legions. And they're operating advanced technology. It is a kinetic war. And there's a lot to be said there. But the point here is that, like the late Russ Dizdar used to say, Jesus is the hero of humanity. He takes back dominion of the earth for the offspring of Adam because he is a son of man. Remember when Jesus said, "All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth." Why? Because as the Son of God, he has all authority in heaven. And as the Son of Man, he has all authority on earth. And that is why he is worthy to take the scroll. And that is why only he can rescue humanity from the nightmare that's going to unfold at the end of the age. And that is precisely what he does. He returns to the earth and he vanquishes the beast and the armies of the beast. And he sets up his kingdom. And he rules and he reigns from his father's throne, David, from David's throne. So this is the scene at the end of the age. And so I believe that what this speaks to, what this bespeaks, is a scenario in which mankind has lost his birthright, lost dominion of the earth in the same way that he lost it during the Genesis 6 affair. Hybrids are ruling the earth, the offspring of the dragon and his princes. And they are assembling an army against the King of Heaven to make war with him. Because this is exactly what they do, by the way. This is Psalm 2. This kinetic war with God, with the Son of God, the returning King, the rightful heir of his father's throne on earth, the throne of David, which is, by the way, the throne of Adam. The rightful ruler of earth, this war that's going to break out at the end of the age, kinetic war between the armies of the beast and the armies of the kingdom returning to the earth, Christ returning, the second advent, is portrayed in Psalm 2. Why do the nations rage and the people plot a vain thing? What is the vain thing that the people are plotting? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together. That's two separate groups. The kings of the earth and the rulers, and we'll talk about that in a minute. The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together. That's two separate groups, the kings and the rulers, against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, this is what they're plotting, let us break their bonds in pieces and cast away their cords from us. In other words, they're saying, we will not have this man rule over us. We will not submit to the King of Heaven. The response from the Father, he who sits in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall hold them in derision. Then he shall speak to them in his wrath and distress them in his deep displeasure. Look what he says. Yet I have set my king on my holy hill of Zion. In other words, he's saying to the Antichrist, to the man of sin, who I believe will be named Apollo, son of Satan, you think that you will be the Lord of the earth, that you will occupy the throne of Adam. But I am going to set my son on that throne. And this is the prelude to Armageddon. And so I always tell people, Armageddon is not merely a war with Israel. Armageddon is a war with God. It is a war, a battle against the King of Heaven. It is a preemptive strike against the King who is returning to take back dominion of the earth for the offspring of Adam. That's what Armageddon is at the end of the age. And it's a kinetic war. That means it's a physical war. It's a technological conflict. And of course, Christ vanquishes his enemies at Armageddon and returns with the armies of heaven in train. So that is the culmination of where all of this is going. That's where transhumanism is headed. It's headed to a post-human condition on planet Earth. Why? Because just like Esau, we are going to trade our birthright, sell our birthright, dominion of the earth, for a bowl of stew. And what is that bowl of stew? You shall become like the gods. Forfeit the biological trademarks of Adam that make you human. Forfeit those trademarks. Transition into a post-human condition, and you will have extended life, impervious to disease, all the things that go along with being transhuman. You will become like the gods. And who are the gods that you will become like? Just like in Genesis 6, the gods will be walking among men. And those gods are going to be the hybrid offspring of the dragon and his princes. And the beast, Apollo, what does he do? Because the dragon imbues Apollo, his son, with his authority, the book of Revelation says. And what does the beast do in turn? What does the son do? He causes men to worship the dragon. This is Genesis 6 all over again. It's the Watchers and their sons, but this time it's the dragon and his son, the dragon princes and their sons. This is a different topic, but I believe that there are, in fact, 7 dragon princes. But so they're imbuing their sons with their authority, and their sons are leading mankind to worship them, the dragon, to worship their fathers, the dragons, the angelic reprobates who have made war with God. And so this is a scenario very much like Genesis 6, to come full circle, as in the days of Noah. This is a scenario very much like Genesis 6. It is a Faustian bargain, again, to legally usurp dominion of the earth from mankind at the end of the age. And remember what it says regarding the beast. He is permitted to rule for a short time. Permitted by whom? By God. Just as the offspring of the Watchers, the giants, were permitted to rule for a short time, because they have legally usurped the birthright of mankind. They have done it legally, just like the Watchers in Genesis 6. And so what follows is you reap what you sow, and mankind is going to reap what they sow. They're going to forfeit the birthright of Adam by becoming post-human, and when they give it up, when they relinquish it, somebody else is going to seize it. And that somebody else has to be human enough to appropriate that birthright. And that is why they have to be hybrids. Human mothers, but their fathers are the dragon princes. There's reasons why things are happening at the end of the age. The kingdom of heaven is a kingdom of order. It's not chaos, it's order. You can't just do whatever you want. The devil does not have free reign to do whatever he wants. People say the devil cheats. No, he doesn't. There's no such thing as cheating in the kingdom of heaven. You have to play by the rules. And that's what the devil does. He plays by the rules. When he came against Israel, he could never just wipe Israel out. All he could do was get Israel to sin against God, to offend God. And then what would happen? God would wipe Israel out in judgment. The devil had no power to do that. All he had was the power to tempt. And that's what he does at the end of the age. That's what transhumanism is. It's the bowl of stew. We're coming to the end of our genetic rope, as I said in the beginning. We only have, we have this technology at the same time that is just coincidentally in place for us to transition out of Adam. It's a, in my book, I call it the pitfall of posthumanism. It's a trap. It's a trap to transition us out of Adam, to transition us out of our birthright, to get us to willfully relinquish dominion of the earth. Meanwhile, the hybrid sons of the dragon are usurping it. That is what's happening at the end of the age. And that's what I try to convey in the book. That's, so everything we've talked about today, everything is in the book, is in Birthright, in much more detail. And I try to be very scholarly with it. And I provide a whole lot of scriptural references all the way through. So all these things that I'm saying, there's references that back all of this up, or at least from my perspective. I'm not saying everything I'm saying is right, but at least I provide what I believe are references, are scriptural references and historical references that undergird the things I'm saying. That's all provided in the book, and all of these concepts are expounded with much more detail. And what I try to do is to tell that story from beginning to end. Again, that story that began to ruminate in my heart back in the Amazon and came out of me when I was writing this book. And I believe that it's a very timely book because we are in fact living at the beginning of the end of the age. And that doesn't mean that the end of the age is tomorrow. In fact, I believe we can calculate. And in fact, by calculating the end of the age, I mean we can calculate the number of the beast, which we're told to do in Revelation. The number of the beast is not 666 or 666. The number of the beast is the number of a man, 6. Why is the number of a man 6? Because God created man on the 6th day. The number of the man is 6. So it's not 666 or 666. Well, it is 666, but it's not 666 as a whole number. It's 6, 6, 6. And so when you have three numbers like that, 6, 6, and 6, and you're told to calculate those numbers, what do you do? And it's universal, by the way. Mathematics, universal across the globe. When you have three numbers like that and you calculate them, you always multiply them. 6 times 6 times 6, 216, which is a derivative of 2,160, which is the exact number of years that it takes to complete one age, one processional age, which is how the ancients measured the ages. Christ, his birth corresponded with the age of Pisces. Again, inaugurating the age of Pisces. That's why Jesus was represented by a fish, because the fish is a symbol of Pisces. And the early Christians knew that the age of Pisces had been inaugurated with the birth of the Son of God, with the birth of the Messiah. And so Pisces, the fish, became the symbol of Christ in the early church. It was the age of Christ, the age of Pisces. And Jesus said at the end of the age, what age was he referring to? This one. This age, the one in which he was born. At the end of this age, these things would happen. And then in Revelation, calculate the number of the beast. 666. 6 times 6 times 6. 216. Again, in the ancient world, you could take that zero off and it still represents the same number. 2,160. It's the duration of a precessional age. So literally, the beast, when is the beast going to arise? At the end of the age of Pisces. When is the end of the age of Pisces? 2,160 years from the inauguration of the age of Pisces, from the birth of Christ, who was born sometime around 4 BC. So you calculate from the birth of Christ 2,160 years, we're in the year 2022. So you add on the 4 BC, because Jesus wasn't born on 1 AD, he was born probably around 4 to 5 BC, so that puts us around really 2026 or thereabouts. So 2026, 25 years since the birth of Christ, and an age has 2,160 years. We're getting pretty close, but it's not tomorrow, right? People get mad at me for saying that, but it's not tomorrow. It's at the end of the age of Pisces, the transition into the age of Aquarius. So, and what's really fascinating is that you have Yuval Noah Harari out there, the famous proponent of transhumanism, who's like the spokesperson for the global elite as it pertains to transhumanism. And Harari is out there saying that we are the last generation of Homo sapiens. He says, 100 to 200 years from now, the Earth will be populated by post-human species. Is it coincidental that Harari's projections correspond to the end of the age? And Armageddon and the beast making war with God, the post-human army? It's not coincidental that at the end of the age, even according to these futurists, so if we're in, let's say 2025 years from the birth of Christ, and the end of the age isn't until 2,160 years, then Harari's prediction about the end of humanity and the rise of a post-human species puts us right at the end of the age when we know the beast is coming, according to the calculation of the number of the beast. 6 times 6 times 6. So this whole thing of 666 is it's 6 times 6 times 6. See, it's the precessional number of an age, the age of Pisces. We know when the beast will arise at the age of Pisces. So are we at the end of the age? Yes, we are. We're at the beginning of the end of the age. And in the end of these ages is always a very chaotic, disruptive, transitional period. And we're already beginning to get into the rumblings of this disruption. And so everything is like culminating toward the end of the age of Pisces. This isn't astrology. This is astronomy. And this is how the ancients calculated the ages, including the ancient Hebrews, who used the Mazzaroth. And the Mazzaroth was the zodiac. This is not astrology, making predictions about your life and so forth. That's astrology. This is astronomy. And indeed, I would say to confirm this position for those who don't think that using these kinds of predictions based on precession of the equinox and so forth is biblically valid, I would challenge people with something that nobody yet that I'm aware of has realized regarding the birth of Christ. So the birth of Christ corresponded with the age of Pisces, the inauguration of the age of Pisces. What most people don't realize is that there is a prophecy in the Old Testament that tells us exactly when Christ would be born. And it's no wonder that the astronomers from the East, the wise men from the East, knew that Christ was born. And this is part of the reason why the great king, the eternal king, had been born. Because they were watching the sky, these astronomers, these ancient Middle Eastern astronomers, I should say these Near Eastern, ancient Near Eastern astronomers. There's a story in the Old Testament, very famous story of Abraham and Isaac, in which Abraham takes Isaac to sacrifice, to make a sacrifice to God. And Abraham doesn't realize that the sacrifice is going to be his son, his only son, his beloved son. And when he finds out that the sacrifice that God is requiring of him is his only son, his beloved son, his only begotten son. So Abraham takes his, as the story goes, Abraham is told to go and make a sacrifice to Yahweh. And he had to go and make this sacrifice on Mount Moriah. And so he takes He was told to take his son Isaac and go make a sacrifice. And of course, originally they're thinking, "Oh, we're going to go and we don't have anything to sacrifice. What are we going to sacrifice?" But God wants us to sacrifice something. And of course, Abraham realizes that that sacrifice was going to be his son. But because Abraham was faithful to God, and he knew that God had given him that son, because Abraham's wife was barren, apparently, and God brought her womb to life miraculously to produce Abraham's son, his promised son. Remember, God had promised a son to Abraham. And what I'm trying to do right now is to cause people to make the connections between Abraham's promised son and the promised son of the Father, Jesus, right? Who would become our sacrifice. So, because that's what this story is depicting. It's a play acting. It's play acting the gospel. It's predicting the gospel. It's predicting the gospel, the message of the gospel. And so Abraham takes his son up to the mountain and, of course, prepares the altar. And when it's time to make the sacrifice, Isaac says, "Where's the sacrifice?" And you can imagine, where's the animal that we're going to sacrifice? And you can imagine Abraham with tears streaming down his face. "You're the sacrifice." And Isaac loved God, loved the God of his father. And just like a lamb, of course, again, drawing parallels to Jesus, like a lamb going to slaughter, willingly submitted himself to this sacrifice. Okay? So he lays him down on the altar, and Abraham raises his hand to plunge his knife into his son's heart so that he can become a burnt offering. And just as Abraham is about to plunge this knife into Isaac, he hears a voice. "Don't do that. Stop." And Abraham, to his surprise, discovers that God had indeed provided a sacrifice. And it was a ram. And the ram's horns were stuck in the bushes. Okay? Picture this ram with his horns are stuck, and the ram's caught in the bushes. And obviously, to Abraham's great relief, God had provided a sacrifice. And it wasn't Abraham's son. Of course, it was his son. And that's what that ram represented. I always wondered about that story, and I thought, Jesus is called the Lamb of God over and over and over. Why was it a ram and not a lamb? Why was it a ram? And the answer turns out to be very intriguing. Because that ram with his horns stuck in the bushes was a symbol, an astronomical symbol of when Christ would come, when the sacrifice that God was providing would show up, when his son would come to be the sacrifice for the sins of many, for the sins of the world. And how does that prefigure the coming of Christ and pinpoint when Christ will arrive? Because it has to do with the precession of the equinox. And I'm not going to go into the whole precession of the equinox here, but the earth is tilted on an angle and it wobbles, and that wobble, which is very slow, takes 26,000 years to complete a whole precession, very slowly turning on its axis, and that wobble takes 26,000 years. That's called a great year. But the ancients had divided the ages into the signs of the zodiac, 12 signs of the zodiac. And so those were the precessional houses, the ages. Each age was divided into 12 houses, and each one of those periods of time, those ages, were designated by a symbol. Now, people say, well, that's pagan, that's the zodiac. No, because the ancient Hebrews had the same exact calendar, but it was called the Mazzaroth. It's the same one. Okay, so it's not pagan. Remember that the book of Genesis says that the stars and the heavenly bodies are given for times and seasons. That's what we're talking about. So, and this gets a little complicated, so I'll try and condense it. But the way that you determine what age you're in is based on the vernal equinox. And the vernal equinox is the spring equinox. During the spring equinox, when you look due east, the sun rises in the east, sets in the west, right? When you look due east, about an hour before dawn, you will see a constellation hovering on the horizon right where the sun is going to rise. So you have a constellation is coming up over the horizon, and right behind that constellation is the sun. Right where the sun is going to rise, about an hour or 40 minutes before dawn, you're going to see a constellation sitting on the horizon that's slowly rising. And right behind that constellation is the sun, but the sun has not yet risen. So as the sun rises, and you're looking right where the sun is about to rise, there's going to be a constellation sitting on the horizon that's slowly rising. The sun is coming up right behind it. This is how the ancients determined what age they were in. That constellation corresponds to one of the signs of the zodiac, or the Mazzaroth in Hebrew. That sign delineates the age in which you are currently in. Whatever sign that is, right now, if you look due east on the vernal equinox, you're going to see Pisces, because we are in the age of Pisces. So that's how you determine the age in which you're in. Now, that's the age, the marker of the age. Behind this constellation is the previous age, the sign of the previous age. So that previous age is below the horizon. And whatever that previous age is, it's being covered as it rises by the sun. The sun is now here, so you can't see that constellation, okay? It's being consumed in the sun, all right? And the ancients, including the Inca and all different cultures around the world, considered that constellation that's rising covered with the sun to be a sacrificial sign. It's being sacrificed in the sun, in the fire of the sun. Indeed, they would say that it is affixed to the sacrificial post. Why? Because as that constellation rises, you can't see it because the sun is consuming it. So you have the sun consuming the sacrificial sign, right? And above it, you have the sign indicating what age you're in. So, going back to the story of Abraham and Isaac, God provides a ram as the sacrifice rather than Isaac for Abraham. So, why is it a ram? Why is it not a lamb? Jesus is called the Lamb of God over and over again. Why is it not a lamb? Because that ram is a time marker. During the age of Pisces, at the dawning of the age of Pisces, when you looked due east on the vernal equinox, and Pisces is rising above the horizon, which constellation do you suppose is affixed to the sacrificial post? Aries, the ram. Aries, the ram, is being sacrificed during the age of Pisces. So the ram that God had provided to be the sacrifice that represented his son, Jesus of Nazareth, that would come to be the sacrifice for our sins, which was being play acted in Abraham and Isaac. That ram not only was the sacrifice that Abraham used as the burnt offering, but it was also the zodiacal symbol of the age in which the Son of God would appear on the earth as the sacrifice for mankind. And it was a ram. It was Aries. And so, if you were an astronomer and you understood that story, you would have interpreted it because it was meant to be interpreted. You would have interpreted that story that the sacrifice, the Father's Son, was coming. The sacrifice for our sin was coming at the dawning of the age of Pisces, when the ram, Aries, was affixed to the sacrificial post and being sacrificed by the sun. It was a time marker based on the precession of the equinox. So you would have known, had you been ancient Near Eastern astronomer and familiar with the story of Abraham and Isaac, you would have interpreted that this king, this Son of God, would show up at the dawning of the age of Pisces. When was Christ born? Coincidentally, at the beginning, the inauguration of the age of Pisces. Right on time. Right on time. As it was prefigured in the sacrifice of the ram in the story of Abraham and Isaac. And now there's a whole lot of stuff like that all throughout the Bible. See, it's astronomical. And when you say astronomical, what you're dealing with is time. Time. So it's just a beautiful prefiguration, not only of the story of the gospel, but also it's a time marker when the Son of God, his beloved Son, because God tells Abraham, take your son, your beloved son, right? And so God is saying, I'm going to provide my beloved son. I'm going to send my beloved son to be the sacrifice for your sins. And he's coming, by the way. I'll tell you when he's coming. The age of Pisces. When the age of Pisces, when Pisces is rising above the horizon on the vernal equinox and the ram is being sacrificed in the sun, that's when my son is coming. And Jesus says, at the end of his age, Pisces, the beast is going to rise and all these things are going to happen on the earth. And then in the book of Revelations, calculate the number of the beast and what do we get? 6 times 6 times 6 is the precessional number of an age. We get 2,160. The beast is coming at the end of the age. God is telling us when all these things are going to happen. Right? But we don't understand because we forgot how to use the celestial timepiece. But the astronomers from Mesopotamia didn't forget. They showed up when Christ was born because they read the signs. And the dawning of the age of Pisces was just one of the signs. There were some other things going on as well that indicated that Christ was going to be born. And they didn't even know exactly where he was going to be born. They had to get that information from Herod, who said to them, oh, according to the scriptures, Christ was going to be born in Bethlehem. And so what did Herod do? He tried to kill all the children 1 to 3 years old or whatever it was to eliminate this king, this Messiah who was being born. And of course, that is prefigured, or not prefigured, that is depicted, symbolized in Revelation, in the dragon waiting to devour the man-child that's going to be born from the woman. That's a whole nother topic that's discussed in the book. And again, all of this is very intricate. And hopefully I recalled all of this information and details accurately. And if I didn't, I'm sorry. It's very difficult for me to keep all of this straight in my head.